Grant, good afternoon, and thank you for taking the time to chat to us. What measures did GolfRSA take in terms of the national lockdown?
Yeah, good afternoon, Lottie. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. I think we're living in unprecedented times, so a lot of the stuff we've been dealing with, we've had to, obviously, like everyone else, deal with it as it came at us, so to speak. So, obviously, one of the first things we did before the hard lockdown was we looked at the tournaments that we had scheduled, and we cancelled some of those. We decided not to postpone. We have such a hectic schedule that to postpone creates the impression or the expectation that we're going to try to have the tournament later in the year. And because of the uncertainty, we decided to rather cancel events. So, we cancelled things like the SA country districts, the seniors interprovincial, the high schools and primary schools championships. The Nomads SA Girls Rose Bowl was being played, pretty much about to be played at the time of the restrictions where you couldn't have more than 100 people together. And then once the hard lockdown came, obviously it meant that other tournaments had to be looked at as well. So we cancelled things like the SA Under-19s, Under-17 Championship, the Nomads Under-15 Challenge. And, the provincial unions have done the same. And our policy now is that for an individual stroke play event, like an SA Under-19s as an example, we would 60 days before make a call, because people have to obviously make preparations in terms of flights and accommodation, that type of thing. But when you have a larger scale logistical scenario like interprovincial championships, we are going to make a call 90 days before the date. So, we've got the major interprovincial championship, the Open Interprovincial, is happening in September, and we'll have to make that decision 90 days before as well. So, we all live in very uncertain times, and one has to just deal with that as much as possible. And obviously we also engaged as much as possible with government, but one can only imagine that they are themselves, battling to keep their heads above water, being swamped with all sorts of inquiries and that type of thing. So, our engagements with the Department of Sport have gone along the lines of what the regulations say that you can and can't do. And, in terms of critical maintenance services, which cannot be delayed for more than 21 days, and are essential to resume operations after lockdown, golf courses slot under that category, because it's not about how pretty you can keep your golf course during this lockdown. It's about ensuring that the golf course doesn't die, because if golf courses die and get into a state of disrepair, in order to revive those courses, the cost implications on the clubs, really ramps up. So you would have clubs that have not only gone through a hard time, but literally cannot resurrect themselves. So in terms of those regulations, we're allowed skeleton staff at golf courses for basic maintenance. And thank goodness we have been able to, through the industry, through the networks, get that message out there and make sure that, it's done in a responsible manner. Skeleton staff only, no manicuring as such, but more along the lines of basic maintenance.
Many people don't understand why golf is not permitted during the lockdown here in South Africa, whereas in the UK and so on, they are still playing golf. Won't you please shed a little light on this for us?
Riley, look, it's an interesting question. We're getting dozens of emails around why can't we play golf. I think those emails are misdirected. Firstly, none of us at GolfRSA are specialists in pandemics. So, we merely follow the government regulations. I think what is causing confusion is when you look at other countries like Australia, like the United States, like the UK, there is golf that is being allowed in some of those countries and in some of those states in those countries with varying degrees of restrictions. So people look at that and they say, let's fire off an email or a phone call to GolfRSA and ask why we can't do the same. The answer is we will follow government guidelines. They've obviously taken advice from experts. And if you really think about it, Lali, why should golf be afforded the privilege of being able to play and risk the infection of people when other sports can't play? The moment you open up that can of worms, every other sport will also want to be able to to take part. I mean, you can't even walk your dog at the moment. So, playing golf is way down the list of priorities. And I think people need to understand that until this disease is understood more and until we are directed correctly, surely the best thing is to err on the side of caution. From a GolfRSA perspective, that's why we support the government's guidelines. Of course, it's a worrying factor that, how are clubs going to survive? How are we going to resurrect these clubs after the lockdown? And I can assure you that every single day it feels like I work almost harder now than during what used to be normal times, because we're looking at things the whole time. We're engaging with various golf clubs, the golf unions, the people within the industry, the PGA, the Sunshine Tour. We're having so many discussions these days, obviously, via the various online apps and portals that there are. But we really are looking at how we ease back into the new normal, whatever the new normal of life is after this. And we've put together, we're busy with a document right now that we're working on, and it changes quite often on a regular basis in terms of how we will address going back to playing golf once restrictions start to be lifted. Because you can't just go back to how it was. You'll have to have scenarios where maybe only one person is on the tee box, maybe only one person is on the green at a time. You'll have to have spacing between the four balls, and maybe you won't even have four balls. Maybe you'll only have a two ball going forward. So these are all things that it's a fluid environment that we're working in, and it's one that we are experimenting with and looking at best case scenarios. We really are engaging with everyone in the industry and getting a collection of ideas and suggestions in order to be able to, as best possible, get the golf industry back up to speed. I think, for me, what is the most important thing? The most important thing I think that people have to remember about the golf industry is not only that it's a wonderful game, but the sheer number of people that are employed in the golf industry is staggering. And our country is no exception, and so many of those people literally live on the breadline. It's not only about the directors of golf and the managers of clubs who, in many cases, earn healthy salaries. It's about, the caddies. It's about the people that are basic maintenance workers or cleaning staff. They are severely hard hit by this. So the more clubs that we can get up to speed and save once this, pandemic is under control, the better it is, not only for people playing golf, but I think it's really, as I just said, important to understand. It's better for the economy, for the people whose jobs we will save, and the number of families that are saved through saving those jobs. And I think it's also important to remember that the impact on tourism that the golf industry has, it's a massively positive impact. So many people travel to this country for our wonderful golf courses and for the amazing golf clubs and network of people within the industry. So that is a vital component of what we have to look after.
Grant, you've just talked about, the different sectors, and like any other sector in South Africa, we are going to be hard hit by this lockdown economy-wise. And one of your biggest headaches surely has to be not losing members, because GolfRSA is, highly dependent on the affiliation fees generated by the members. Just talk to us about that.
Look, the backbone of GolfRSA's funding comes through affiliation fees. Affiliation fees essentially are a portion of your club membership fees. So if someone isn't joining a club as a club member, then GolfRSA is not receiving affiliation fees, and therefore the governing body's budget is reduced. So the less members at golf clubs we have, the less funding that we have in terms of our core funding from affiliation fees. So it's a massive concern that people will be losing jobs. They will more than likely see being a member of a golf club as less of a priority once we come out of this crisis that we're in. So it is a very big concern that affiliated member numbers will drop. Obviously, we have wonderful partners in the form of sponsors like Nomads and Aon and various other sponsors, hotel groups, City Lodge, Silver Sun, that are on board with us. And sponsors are a vital part of keeping amateur golf going. But they too will be under unprecedented stress and in conditions that they haven't encountered before. So who knows how that'll have an impact on our affiliation fees. And a lot of our affiliation fees are not only spent on running golf tournaments. particularly junior golf tournaments, but right through the ages. But it's also spent on, handicapping, on rating golf courses, on educating people in terms of rules, on governing the game. And a portion of those affiliation fees also go to grassroots development with the South African Golf Development Board and South African Disabled Golf, who do an amazing job in this country. So it has a knock-on effect to those amazing organizations that do such incredible work. And when I say grassroots level, I'm talking about really underprivileged youngsters. And again, it's not only about golf. It's about the hope and the values that teaching those youngsters gives them. And in many cases, there's feeding programs that go with those golf chapters that we run through the Development Board and Disabled Golf. So, there's other scenarios besides golf become impacted on through this economic crisis.
So the South African Golf Association has undertook, according to the release, to take a very careful look at what they are going to do with the affiliation fees.
Lolly, look, to be entirely accurate, the GolfRSA is the overall umbrella body, but at the root of affiliation fee decisions is really the South African Golf Association, the SAG executive, who we work incredibly closely with. So ultimately the decision will rest with them, but I can assure you that behind the scenes they're looking at this very seriously, and there will be a concerted effort to reduce affiliation fees after this. I think what we have to be very careful of is to put a number on something right now, because we're dealing with moving targets here. We don't even know when the next lockdown, or this lockdown will end, or whether it will be extended or for how long. So when the variables are so great, it's probably unwise to commit to a number in terms of affiliation fees going forward, what that number will be. But I think it's important that the public knows that the sentiment here is that we would rather try and help clubs and affiliated members through lower affiliation fees and maybe losing another tournament or two than not being able to do something in that respect. So, without saying that taking the decision out of the hands of the SAGA, they are looking at this with exactly the same sentiment, and we are determined to do something to make a difference.
Then, just to come back to the release on Monday, you took a salary cut ahead of the lockdown. What inspired you to do this, and how do you feel about your staff following suit?
Yeah, Lani, look, I did that in my personal capacity. It was something I did privately. Unfortunately, maybe it's because of the position I'm in. It became public knowledge, which wasn't a comfortable factor for me at the time. But that's how it's panned out. Why did I take the decision? I think that when I first started hearing about this coronavirus, it felt like it was so far away, and I'm sure it felt like that for everyone. It was one of those things that happened in China. And I remember having a business meeting with someone from China, probably the early part of February, and he said he couldn't go back because of the virus. And it was such a relaxed conversation. It was something that wasn't happening to me. And in a space of a very few short weeks, through my network of friends and people in the golf industry, and all my years of traveling, coaching golf around the world for 22 years, I started having personal conversations with people that were either in China or who had very, very high up connections in China and really understood what was happening. And then it started a scenario where friends of mine had friends and family in Europe that were dying from the virus. And still people in South Africa weren't really aware of the seriousness of this. And when that started happening, I realized that we weren't going to escape this. This wasn't something that was going to be regional. It occurred to me that it was going to be international, a worldwide crisis. And I started following various experts on Twitter. And when I say experts, I don't mean people that think they know what they're talking about because they, regurgitate someone else's opinion. I'm talking about following people that have been looking at pandemics, experts such as scientists and doctors for years and years and years. And what I read there was eye-opening, and it was scary. And I realized that, difficult decisions were going to have to be made going forwards. And also, I just thought about the immediate environment that I'm involved in. One of the things I do in my capacity as managing director of the South African Golf Development Board is I am so aware of how many people that work for us. I'm talking about coaches that are literally from the poor communities where the children live. The coaching that they do, the hourly sessions that they do daily for the Golf Development Board, is their only job and their only means of income. And if they don't coach, they don't get paid. So we had to, for a start, look at giving them some income protection. And we also, I'm so aware of, people like caddies. Most of our caddies live on the breadline and live hand to mouth. If people weren't going to be playing golf, how were they going to earn a living? And guess what? They couldn't even go and wash cars for a living because they're going to be in lockdown. So when I saw that we were going to be on this path to lockdown as well, I think guilt was a big factor. How do you sit there taking a full salary and people can't put bread on the table? And I just didn't feel that it would be right. And I felt that if you're going to have to make tough decisions, start with yourself. So that's what I did. And I must say that the fact that the staff, not long after that, came on board voluntarily, and service providers like you, Lali, also took cuts, for which we are extremely grateful. We have a number of different service providers that provide media services to us, tournament support services, etc., etc. So the fact that you look at what the Sunshine Tour has done as well, the golf industry is standing together on this. We're working on various initiatives in the industry, and many clubs have done fantastic initiatives for caddies, and we're looking at doing something as well for caddies right now. So I think it's important that you look at. I'm talking about golf, but my wife owns a hair and nail salon, and there's a few people that work for her who literally are commission based. So you look at those people and think most people don't have the luxury of being able to save money because they literally struggle to get through every month. That's the life that a large majority of our population live in. So I just felt that it was the right thing to do. Our staff felt it was the right thing to do. Our service providers did, and many other people in the golf industry felt the same thing. And I think that's something that I'm proud to be associated with.
Fantastic. Grant, thank you very much for taking the time today to chat to us and to give us a very good and comprehensive insight into the golf industry and what is going on there and all the different aspects thereof. And all I can say is good luck to you guys. And we don't know, as you said, it's a fluid situation. We don't know what the future holds, but it's wonderful to see that at least in the golf industry, you guys are planning way ahead. Thank you very much for your time.
Great pleasure, Lottie. Thank you for the opportunity.